Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Brothers and sisters, friends of Salam Media, friends of the Afia Foundation, we want to invite you. First of all, we want to welcome you. We want to welcome you all, both in South Africa and in the United States and anywhere else where there will be viewers of this broadcast, to this week's edition of A Conversation with El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. I am pleased to be your host, coming to you once again through the Salam Media platform out of Johannesburg, South Africa. For those of you not familiar with this platform, Salam Media is an online portal for humanitarian journalism. We don't just report the news, we advise good-hearted folk on what they can do about it. We have two outstanding sisters as our special guests for today's conversation. And both of these sisters are personal friends of mine. Dr. Sadia Ali Aden is a Somali-American physician and human rights activist based right here in the DMV. And my sister, Dr. Nisa Muhammad, is the Assistant Dean for Religious Life at Howard University, and among other duties, she serves as the president of the Association of Muslim Chaplains. She too is based right here in the DMV. We will post her entire resume on online when we send out the release, inshallah ta'ala, on this broadcast. Let me begin with by laying the foundation for today's conversation, and we can bring our sisters on now with this question that I want to pose to both of them. Right now, we have a number of things going on nationally within this country. You know, our conversation for today, our focus for today's conversation is on the the political climate that this country is in, the national elections and everything connected to it. We have this tumultuous upcoming election that's going to be taking place just a few weeks from now. We have a global pandemic at which the United States of America is the epicenter. We have reached, if I'm not mistaken, we have reached the 200,000 mark in terms of deaths. We have national, social, and political unrest going on from coast to coast, north, south, east, and west. We have environmental disasters. And now, if that weren't enough, we have a vacancy left on the U.S. Supreme Court, and a struggle has already begun. A very intense political struggle to determine not only who will be the person to replace this now deceased Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but when this replacement will take place. So we've got a number of tumultuous issues, and I want to begin today's conversation by asking both of my sisters, of all of these issues that are exploding on the that have exploded on the national front, these issues that have international implications as well. Which of these issues, if you had to single out one, which is the issue that resonates with you the most, that you consider to be the most important out of these few that we've just highlighted? Let's begin with our sister Nisa, Dr. Nisa Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. And let me start off by saying, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you for having me as a guest on your show. I really appreciate the consideration. I think that for me, looking at all of what you've talked about, I think the global pandemic is at the top of my list, because after the election is over, people are still going to be suffering around the world from this global pandemic. And I think that really has to be a major issue that we look at, and what is happening with how the U.S. is handling it, what's happening with how the world is handling it. And as you said, the U.S. is the epicenter. And yes, it's reaching approximately 200,000 deaths, and we're not about to reach the flu season. And so that's a collision course right there. And so for me, this global pandemic is what is at the top of my list, because it is disproportionately affecting people of color, especially Black people, Latinos. So for me, it's the global pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Sadia. Oh, you're muted. Unmute yourself.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yeah. Thank you, Brother Mauri, for having us. This is a wonderful platform. I've been following you, but today I guess you have decided to make me one of those people are watching. So I hope we live up to your greatness, and may Allah protect you.
Ameen.
Thank you. I do agree with my sister Nisa. Did I pronounce your name right?
Yeah.
I hope. Yes.
Yeah.
I do agree with her. The COVID-19 pandemic is really one of the core issues that really creates anxiety in almost everyone in this country and around the world, of course. But here in the United States, as you talked about earlier, the death toll as right now has topped 200,000. I think has even surpassed today. I haven't looked at the numbers today. But that is a serious issue. And President Trump's lack of courage to acknowledge the seriousness of COVID pandemic is what has caused not only my opinion, but widespread experts on the number of deaths that we have seen up to today. He has denied the existence of the virus. When he realized it was here in the country, he has downplayed it, and that has become very clear in the last audios that we have learned from the upcoming book of Woodward. And what is really very what is worrisome, and my sister has mentioned, is the disparity. We have always known that there was a disparity, especially for the people of color. But now we have learned, and that has become reality, especially what happened in New York City, which was the epicenter of this pandemic. The majority of the people who have died were people of color, African Americans, Latinos, and that should be something that is a concern for everyone, because this will continue unless it's addressed. And still, it seems that the president is in denial, and he continues to be that. The second issue that really also is almost parallel for me is an issue that has continued always, which is the institutionalized racism. And this has been brought to the surface by, thank God, Black Lives Matter and their hard work, but unfortunately by the continuous deaths of the Black men. Women have died also as well, but majority of the people who have been killed by the police illegally have been black men, young and old. And that also is a problem, being a mother of a black young man. That's a serious concern for me. So those two have resonated with me.
Mm-hmm. So the pandemic for both of you is number one. We are right in the midst of a very tumultuous election season, and with each passing day, the tumultuous nature of this season, it seems to be getting deeper and deeper, especially given some of the deliberate but irresponsible rhetoric that the present occupant of the Oval Office has been engaged in since the beginning of his presidency. I mean, and it's just become more intense. Where do you think the atmosphere that we're engulfed in right now, where do you think this is taking us as a nation? What do you think the implications are? Again, Dr. Nisa.
So this election is really highlighting the great divide that's in America, because the people who are supporting our current president are a very loyal base that he has. And he said while he was campaigning for the first time, he could probably go out in the middle of New York and commit a murder or commit some kind of heinous crime, and people would still vote for him. So that said a lot about who he is and who his base is, even before he was elected. And that kind of strong base continues today. And so even though he's saying all these things, even though he's done all these things, that base is still firmly supporting him. And that is a clear divide in the American people. There are people who support him, and there are people who clearly do not support him. And so how this is all going to play out, will this lead to perhaps a civil war in America? If he's reelected, if he's not reelected? I mean, he says he's going to contest any decision that's not in his favor. Mm-hmm. I mean, even before the election even happens. So he's like being a dictator. Say, if I don't win, then that means it's rigged. And so he's clearly drawing lines of division for the American people.
And before I put the same two questions, because there's a follow-up to this, to you, Dr. Sadia, I want to ask you also, Sister Nisa, given what you just correctly stated, I mean, I agree with you 100%. What do you say to those folk out there, and especially Muslims and African Americans, who would make the argument there's no difference between either one of them, and so at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter who we vote for, and so I'm going to abstain. I'm not going to engage in the process of voting for either one of them. If I vote for Biden or Trump, I'm voting for evil, and so I'm not going to participate at all. What is the argument you would make to those who make that argument?
So for people who say that, I would say to them that you have a right to express that, you have a right to feel that way, but on the other hand, we are about lessening the evil. As Muslims, we should be about lessening the evil that people have to experience and the oppression that's in the land. And so if that's our charge as Muslims, we have a right to confront and a right to fight against oppression in the land. Your vote can make a difference. And if you don't think that your vote makes a difference, then let's try to give you a greater understanding of what's going on in the American political landscape to be able to see that. But if we look at the popular vote versus the electoral college, I think that's the confusion people may have sometimes, that, okay, can he win? What's going to happen? But the thing is, people's votes can make a difference. People's votes can absolutely make a difference. And the thing is, they want you to believe that your vote will not make a difference. That's the real issue. And if you believe your vote won't make a difference, it won't. It won't make a difference in the wrong way or the right way, depending upon how you're thinking. But I would just say for everyone, we have the right to vote, And as Muslims, we have a right to fight against oppression in the land where we are. And if you don't see the oppression that people are suffering today, for example, in terms of healthcare, people with pre-existing conditions, the current president wants to do away with that, even though he says he doesn't. You know, just something as simple as that. Healthcare, you know, environmental protection. I mean, there's some key issues that this president is using to, in fact, continue the oppression of people. And so we just have to be knowledgeable of what's going on in the world to be able to use our vote wisely.
Dr. Sadia.
Yes, I do. I do agree with my sister. Of course, the president has indicated that, and unfortunately, I believe he was right. If he has shot someone, he would be able to get away with it. Thank God he hasn't done that in his own, but of course, indirectly, I believe he has done that. And it seems like those who have done it are getting away with it. So it's very unfortunate that we Muslims are debating on the issue, you know, we should not vote for anyone because they're the same. It's true in so many different ways. I always say the Democrats and Republicans are the same as far as we're concerned. A lot of horrible things have been happening before under both administrations, and as well as also not only domestically, also internationally. But you know, we have to take the lesser of two evils. What's happening right now is voting is a matter of survival. And I hate to put it that way, but that's what it is. It's a matter of survival. If Trump has done what he has done, if we have watched him do everything that he has done, and we were not able to stop him because no one seemed to have the authority to do that, then the only way to make sure that he doesn't do worse things is to make sure that he doesn't win second term. Because if he wins, God knows what he's going to do. Who knows? He might even start wars because the first time he was concerned about winning second time. And we know what he has done. He continues to do. For Muslims, Muslim ban was a serious issue where he put almost majority Muslim countries on the Muslim ban and still remain, where families are separated and they cannot even reunite, where he continues to do things that are not favorable for anyone, particularly for the Muslims. The issue of Palestine, you see what's happening right now, moving the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and then continues to make deals with those who don't have a human rights integrity, like the countries in United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. So these are serious issues that we need to be concerned about as Muslims. It's true that neither one of them seem to have the best interest of the Muslims, but which one is the lesser of the two evil? That's what we need to decide.
Yes, I let me say for the record, I agree with both of you sisters. Your analysis, in my humble opinion, is on point, and this is the argument that I too have been making. Let me also note that on the issue of Palestine, I had invited, and we had a Palestinian sister that was supposed to be a part of this discussion today. And unfortunately, in the 11th hour, as we were getting very close to D-Day in terms of broadcast, for whatever the reason, I think she may have gotten cold feet. She might have even had someone to whisper that maybe it might not be in her interest to participate in this discussion. Allah knows best. I know it's this is a very challenging, a very sensitive discussion, but I just wanted folk to know that we did want a Palestinian. We expected a Palestinian sister to be a part of this discussion because, as our sister Sadia just pointed out, I mean, occupied Palestine is once again, right in front of us in terms of an inordinate amount of foreign policy attention being directed to once again to that part of the world. And this occupant of the Oval Office has done what no other president has done up to this point in terms of really putting an official stamp of approval on the genocide and ethnic cleansing that's been taking place in that tortured land now for over 7 decades. Let me also, since before we get away from this foreign policy challenge, let me also ask you this, Sister Sadia. You are a native of Somalia. And, you know, there's a tendency for folk to think when an issue is front and center within the public's consciousness because of the attention it's receiving politically and through the media, when that attention is withdrawn, you know, folks can get the impression that the crisis has lifted, that, you know, there's no longer a crisis there. And coupled with this, this misperception is the fact that there are those who have been arguing also that the Trump administration has not been as militaristic as past administrations have been, that they have not been engaged in killing Muslims overseas and supporting folk with not only diplomatic cover, but also with material support that are killing Muslims overseas. What is the reality right now in your ancestral land? What is the reality of the situation on the ground in Somalia?
Well,
today?
Thank you for the question. You know, Somalia has gone through almost 3 decades of a civil war. Really, a full-fledged civil war the first 10 years, and then it continued and still had the crisis, and still there is Somalia is not completely stable. It's on the recovery mode, but we have still the Al-Shabaab militia or terrorist group that's really occupied almost majority of the southern part of Somalia, south central part of Somalia. And United States have been using drones, bombing, and with the understanding that they're going to surgically remove the leadership of Al-Shabaab. Unfortunately, what has been happening, and I hate to say this, but also throughout the time of President Barack Obama, this has been happening. But it seems under President Trump, it became a weekly affair where the bombing just takes place, where they have been hiding and have not making it public until there was an outcry where civilians were killed. And this has been a continuous basis. So AFRICOM is in Africa. It's an American military command in Africa. For the longest time, they have been searching for a command center, and it seemed finally they have settled in different parts of Africa. Somalia is one of them. And American military forces or soldiers are special forces are in Somalia, different regions. Not long ago, about 2 weeks ago, an American soldier was injured in the southern part of Somalia. And that was shocking to everyone, because what were they doing there on the border with Kenya? So yes, Trump says that he's making sure that America doesn't engage in wars, but what he is doing is he's only avoiding even though there are some boots on the ground, he's hiding it. And not only is he hiding it, but he's coupling that with the hiding of the increased number of attacks by the drones. People are being hit almost every week. Like I said, it became a weekly affair where women and children and elderly have been killed, are continuing to be killed. Their livestock, the nomads, their livestock are being killed. So basically, you're taking the livelihood from these people. If you don't kill them, you take their livelihood. So this is an issue that exists and continue to exist, and no one is talking about it. The human rights violations. He has no regard for human rights, no regard for justice, no regard for environment. It's just crazy what's happening. And anyone who says they're not different would have to understand that what they're doing is, supporting an evil to become more evil next 4 years. So they have to make a decision. And when I'm saying this, I'm talking to my fellow Africans, Somalis, everyone and anyone who can vote has to vote, because it's a matter of survival. The drone attacks probably will continue, but at least we will be able to hear it as it should be, because people will be talking about it. But right now it's hidden from the mass media. Only few media are reporting this.
So I want my brothers and sisters, especially my brothers, who have been making this argument through social media that the Trump administration has not been as militaristic as the Obama administration and other past administrations. I hope that you heard what the sister just shared with us loud and clear. The militarism is ongoing. It has not abated. And it's not just in Somalia. It's in Yemen. It's in Southeast Asia. It's in occupied Palestine, Iraq, Afghanistan. I mean, it has not stopped. It has not abated. We're just not hearing about it. There's so much noise in so many other areas of our public, domestic, and foreign policy life that we're just not hearing about it. So we need to stop those who have been blindly making that argument. You need to stop making that argument, because there is no merit to it at all. With that,
I want to add to that.
Yes, go ahead, sister.
I think part of that is because we don't control the media, and
right.
we need more. We need more systems of media that we control to get that message out. Because the people who are saying, the Trump administration is not as militaristic, what media are you watching? What media are you getting this information from? Because you're definitely not getting it from the Somalis. So the thing is, we have to have more media that we control so we can begin to tell our own stories. And that way we can begin to influence people in their thinking, because their minds are being filled with media that's not telling the whole story. And there's so many other stories, I'm sure, that are in Africa that are not being told because we do not control the media. And we need more media, more programs such as this one, where we can get the information across and more people can watch it so that they can hear for themselves the facts of what's going on, as opposed to it being filtered and deciphered through another media that we do not control.
And my sister Nisa, before we get away from foreign policy again, what is your perspective on the major developments, destabilizing developments that have been taking place on the occupied Palestine front? What this president has done that is really unprecedented in terms of how far he has gone in giving official cover and material support to this apartheid Zionist state called Israel, while at the same time, the oppressive grip that Israel has had on the Palestinian people, especially in Gaza, has just sunken, to a whole new oppressive low. What are your thoughts on, where we are right now in terms of our foreign policy there, and what the implications are for us going forward as a nation.
So it's
especially if he is given another 4 years.
Right, especially that. So it's really sad that the beautiful word peace can be used to cover the injustices of what's going on in that area. The so-called peace treaty, the so-called peace agreement, you know, if people can separate peace from injustice, then they're doing themselves a grave injustice. There's no peace where there is injustice. There's just absolutely no peace. You can't say you are creating a peace treaty and you're developing peace in an area where there are significant numbers of people who are suffering from injustice. I mean, that mathematics does not compute. And so the people that are there, the Palestinians that are there, they are being ignored. Their plight is totally being ignored. And again, because we don't control the media, we're not in a position to really get their story out, to be able to say, look, this is what's going on. And the people who try to do that are so blackballed sometimes that their whole lives and careers are just demolished. Even with the movement, boycott, BDS, boycott,
divestment,
right?
Sanctions, yes.
Divestment, that whole movement, which was getting popularity in academia and on college campuses. There's a whole blacklist now of professors who were proponents of BDS, and their careers have been stifled just because of that. And so you can't have peace, but there is injustice. And for people to not see that very clearly, you cannot say there's a peace treaty, there's a peace agreement, when there are significant numbers of people who are still facing daily injustice. That is not peace, that is just totally injustice.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Sadia, you want to weigh in on this as well?
The issue of Palestine has been near and dear to my heart and to every Muslim. And to every human, rights loving human being, there is no, as my sister said, Israel is the last apartheid standing country. The reason that the world has succeeded to remove South Africa apartheid system was because there was a unified movement against that system. If I take an example as Africa as an example, Africa was united against the stand against the apartheid system in South Africa. Somalia, which is unfortunately is not mentioned a lot and talked about, was one of the leading countries in Africa that has become beacon of hope for the people of South Africa who were fighting the apartheid. I remember there were, from the history we studied, there were training people who were fighting the apartheid. Somalia has blocked these airways, these skies for the apartheid regime. They have songs, poetry, and literature against that apartheid. Africans were all on board. Now, unfortunately, I feel there is an apartheid system, the last apartheid system that exists, and the people who are accepting it and finally wanted to say, oh, it's okay, seem to be the majority are Muslims. Look at what's happening in the Arab countries. Look at what's happening to the people in Gaza. Look at what's happening with the expansions of settlements. The issue of Palestine, I hate to say this, have been neglected. The Muslims should be ashamed of themselves. We should be ashamed of ourselves. Palestine, I keep saying Palestine because that's the name in Arabic,
right,
have been abandoned by the Muslims. We Muslims, Muslim community everywhere should be ashamed of ourselves. And if we need to really help the people of Palestine, then we need to come to every debate, take stand, protest. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Put our money where our mouth is donate, and boycott anything and everything that has to do with that regime. And another crisis that we're not talking about much is what's happening in India, what's happening in China. These Muslims, what's happening in China, it's almost like, I know that we're not supposed to be using the concentration camps, because when we say concentration camps, it seems as though it's only unique to a particular group. But what's happening in China, that's happening to the Muslims, Chinese Muslims, it's just as that. And we don't hear it. Millions of people are either being killed or are being, kept in these concentration camps, separated from their families, indoctrinated. These are issues that we need to talk about. Also in India, what's happening in India, Kashmir.
Yes.
That's also another serious issue. It's like a black hole. We don't hear much about it. And the people of India who are citizens of India, who are Indians, who are Muslim, also are going through crisis. The Muslims need to figure out what is really human rights. When we talk about human rights issue, it's not only lip service. It's for everyone. We have to talk about the human rights of the Muslims. We have to talk about the human rights of the non-Muslims, whether they're Christians or Jews or even other traditional religions, non-traditional religions. So the Muslims need to take their right in the right place in the world, standing for justice. And justice has been the core value of Muslims. And if we cannot talk about justice for the Palestinian people, for the people who are the nearest to us, then we're not able to even talk about the justice for other people. We have to talk about justice, but we have to know justice is for everyone. And we cannot just be selective our discussion on justice. But these are some of the issues that are really crying for help, because they are right now the ones that are suffering the most.
Absolutely. And, on that note, you mentioned, the hotspots that have been in the before the public's attention in one way or another. You mentioned what's happening to our Uyghur brothers and sisters in what the Chinese government, the communist government, likes to refer to as Northwest China. The Uyghur Sea as Turkmenistan. We talk about that, and the attention that it is not receiving within as much attention within the Muslim realm as it should, definitely. So we have that issue, and to the extent that it receives attention in the political sphere beyond the Muslim community, it's for political reasons. It's because of the tensions that exist right now between Uncle Sam and the People's Republic of China. But we're not giving it as much attention as a Muslim community that is well resourced in America as we should. You are absolutely correct. The same thing with what's happening with our brothers and sisters in India and in Kashmir. And Kashmir being a nation state that has been in this oppressive, engaged in this oppressive struggle for human rights and human dignity and self-determination as long as our Palestinian brothers and sisters has. I mean, their struggle goes back to 1947, 48 as well. But it's not as well known. I agree with you. These are issues that we should, as a well-resourced and well-educated and at times when we want to be well-organized community in the West, we should be giving attention to as a Muslim polity, but we're not. And to not give attention to it as we should, it doesn't make us any more secure. In fact, it makes us more insecure because we're all connected. We're all connected.
My brother, if I may jump in just to add one more thing.
Yes.
When we were talking about Trump, it's not, he says we're not involved in wars. What's happening also in Yemen? Yemen now has become the worst humanitarian crisis in the world.
Yes.
And guess what? Those who are involved in the killing of these innocent civilians, starving the children, are two countries that the United States sees as allies, as friends: Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. I know we talked about also Iran and other involvements, but who has the major hold on the crisis that's taking place? It's these countries. And
That's right.
United States supports them on the intelligence, on the air cover, on anything that they need. It's a failed war, illegal war, and unfortunately, I don't even know what to call him. The guy who's Mohammed bin Sultan, the name doesn't even suit him.
Tell me about it.
Yes, that man is a criminal. He should be brought to the International Criminal Court. That's my stance, especially what he has done to Khashoggi. It's very unfortunate. Today, even the film of that innocent civilians journalist who was killed, that film is being pulled from Netflix. I don't know if you heard, because Saudi Arabia has decided to give Netflix access to Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia people have the right to view everything and anything on Netflix. Therefore, in order to have that right, Netflix will drop the movie that's supposed to be released about the killing. I shouldn't say killing, the slaughter of that journalist.
Wow. And see, that kind of deference is why America is doing what it's doing, because they feel like, well, if the Muslims don't care about their own people, why should we care? I remember when I was in high school, there was a group of two students that were running for high school elections. They were running for the senior class president, and their theme was, "You don't care, we don't either." And that's what they ran on. You don't care, we don't either. And so that's how it is for America. America is looking at the Muslim world, and they're like, you don't care about your own people. You don't care what's happening to the Muslims that you say you love, that is a part of your faith. You don't care. Guess what? We don't either. And so America is doing whatever it is doing with impunity, without even looking over her shoulder to say, well, are the Muslims going to come after me? Are the Muslims going to uprise? Are the Muslims going to complain? Are the Muslims going to protest because we're doing A, B, C, and D? And they don't see any of this. And so they keep going, and it keeps getting worse and more atrocities and worse, because in their mind, like it was in these high school students I was with, you don't care, we don't either. And that's really the tragic of it. We have to care as Muslims. We have to begin to care, because that's our faith. If one of us is hurting, all of us should be hurting. But that's part of the problem. Some of us really don't care about other Muslims.
No.
Absolutely. I want to, before we leave foreign policy, I want to share two quotes with you and our viewing audience that are very significant as it pertains to this issue. The Nobel Peace Prize winner, Jody Williams, she said this a number of years back, quote, "The United States, especially in its foreign policy, which is what I worked on for years and years, is not a great nation. It's an interventionist state. It's extremely aggressive militarily. We mess with other people's politics in ways that I can't imagine Americans tolerating. Imagine if some country invaded America to bring their system of government the way we did in Iraq, for example. Can you imagine Americans sitting there and thinking that that's okay? And yet somehow we still in this country have a myth that people are thrilled when we invade them. That's insane, end quote. And then there is this quote from Arundhati Roy, and it really connects well into the observations that the two of you have just made concerning our responsibility as citizens, and especially those of us who are Muslim.
Yep.
Arundhati Roy said, quote, "The battle has to begin here in America. The only institution more powerful than the US government is American civil society. The rest of us are subjects of slave nations. We are by no means powerless, but you have the power of proximity. You have access to the imperial palace and the emperor's chambers. Empire's conquests are being carried out in your name," end quote. And that's a very powerful quote. Both of these back to back are very powerful observations, and they're a good segue for this next question I wanted to put to both of you, respected sisters of mine. What are your opinions of this Black Lives Matter movement? You know, the social unrest that's been taking place here in this country that is unprecedented. You know, certainly in my lifetime, I've never seen anything that compares to what we have been seeing, you know, for weeks now. Let's begin with you, Sister Nisa, Dr. Nisa Muhammad. You work with youth in your job as a chaplain on Howard University's campus. You're in close proximity with youth. What is your sense of this uprising that we're seeing all over the country, and especially from the unique perch that you have as an employee on Howard University's campus? Your thoughts?
So, you know, in my opinion is that this was inevitable. There's only so much oppression a people can stand before they erupt and do something about it. And for centuries, you know, Black people have been under this kind of oppression. And for young people today who are being empowered, especially the students at Howard University's campus, they're being empowered to take charge of their lives and understand you don't have to take this, that you can do something for yourself and you can live a better life. And that is what they're in the streets trying to do. They're trying to make it known that Black lives do matter, because they see in so many arenas where Black life doesn't matter, where Black life, you know, they try to get a job somewhere and Black lives don't matter. They try to live somewhere, Black lives don't matter. COVID-19 strikes, Black lives don't matter. And so people are in the streets trying to let people know that in fact Black lives do matter. And so young people in the uprising. There are middle generation, there are senior citizens out there in the streets uprising because they remember when they couldn't get a drink at a water fountain, when Black lives did not matter. And so they are empowered now to be able to say, yes, Black lives do matter, and we're going to keep doing this until everybody realizes that Black lives do matter.
Alhamdulillah. And before we go to our sister Sadia for her reflection on this question, let me also mention, Sister Nisa, that I've seen, first I saw, you know, an excerpt, a substantive excerpt from the speech that a very exceptional young man delivered on that campus, Chadwick Boseman, the late Chadwick Boseman, may Allah bless him. Then I saw the entire speech. I was just blown away, and it's a reflection of the width and depth of consciousness that, you know, on many levels, that is being produced among young people today, especially at these historically Black universities like Howard. You have anything else you want to?
Yes, I just want to add to that. I was there, so I got to hear it live and in person, and it was even more empowering. And it's a testament to what we can do when we do something for ourselves. That if we know, if people are not going to treat us right, they're not going to teach us right. And so the best thing that we can do is do something for ourselves. And Chadwick Boseman is a perfect example. He learned a moral compass at Howard University. He learned a fortitude for excellence in education at Howard University. And so he's an excellent example of what Howard University produces. And so, I mean, it's a speech that will blow you away. And for your audience who has not heard it, please listen to the whole commencement exercise. The students, the faculty, everybody that was there, we were all jumping in our seats because it was so very, very amazing. Right after Black Panther, I mean, we were just thrilled.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I was thrilled just being able to vicariously be there. Many months after the fact. I mean, I was just blown away. I listened to it again and again and again. I think I listened to that speech 3 times. And it was very touching. MashaAllah ta'ala.
I mean, it had people in tears. I mean, it was just, it was empowering. It was emotional. It was just very good. Just very good.
Dr. Sadia.
So the movement, the Black Lives Matter, as mentioned earlier, it's I mean, of course, it was in existence, but with the death of George Floyd, it has, of course, it's like it blew up. It's like something. It's like it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Everything all of a sudden made sense why Black Lives Matter was established and why people were saying it and why the organization was there and why people were talking about it. It went not only domestically but internationally. I mean, people around the world were saying Black Lives Matter, and that's something, it's a tragic. The unexpected consequences of that tragedy was, it gave a new platform to the Black Lives Matter movement. But for me, I'm excited. I'm very happy. And it's something that historically that will be in the books, of course, if it's documented it right. But really what I want to talk about is, again, come back to the Muslim community and talk about this issue of Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter, it always did and it always will. By the way, I went to Howard. I want to tell my sister. My undergraduate, I went to Howard. So for me, that's where I studied, even though I was coming from Somalia, a nation in Africa that was so proud of the history of Africans. Still, when I came to Howard, I learned a lot about slavery and the details of the whole tragedy. But what really shocked me was the young people had a lot of also misinformation about the Africans.
Yes.
So the Africans have gave them away, and they were a gift that was given to the white man. And on our debates, when I was even still at that time struggling with the whole issue of being in America and everything, even though I was there for a while, and the language barrier and everything, I would still debate. And what we debated about was, no, Africa, loves African people. And whenever I saw a Black person, I remember in the last 2 years of high school when we came, I remember my sister and I, we used to chase that Black person. Because when we saw a Black person, it was like a dream come true. You would chase that person to talk to them, to engage them. But of course, we were foreign to them, and they ran away from us most of the time. And they were young. We were young. But when I looked back, what I also remembered was they didn't see us as their brothers and sisters. But as we grew older, and they also grew older and became more educated, because things have changed since 80s. People now know their history a lot more than they did before. Thank God, alhamdulillah. They know that when you see a Black person, don't run away. They're not your enemy, no matter where they came from. But also as Muslims, I really believe we need to revisit the issue of the African American, not only African American Lives Matter context, but also as far as their human rights is concerned, the disparities in healthcare, their equality in the masjid. When African American becomes a Muslim, and I know the issue is not about that today, but I just want to put that in there so maybe we can expand it in the future. When an African American becomes Muslim, and when a Caucasian becomes a Muslim, they're not truly the same within the Muslim community.
Right. That's right.
And this is where the Muslims are failing and lacking, and where we're not really utilizing our deen. Because Malcolm X, remember, he didn't like the white man, not only because of the oppression, but the color seemed to him an alien, and it seemed an enemy. But when he went to Hajj and he saw what Islam said about the color of the skin of the person, that it didn't matter whether you were black or white, whether you had a blue eyes or a brown eyes, whether you had a thick hair or a soft hair, or whatever that was put in our minds, we were all human beings. And he wrote that famous letter where he talked about when he ate from the same plate, people who had the bluest of the blue eyes, and who were, I don't remember the whole letter, but it was just something that I always remember, and I talk to my children about, is the Muslims have to know, if they really want to be respected in this country, they have to start to respect the people that they have received, what they have received, the people that they're riding on their backs. And that's the African American community. That's something that bothers me. I'm glad I got this opportunity today, and I'm glad that I'm talking about it, and I hope it's okay. I know it was not part of the discussion, but the Muslims, until they start respecting the African Americans and they start giving them back what's that rightfully theirs, that they accept acknowledging that we would not have the rights that we have today if it wasn't for the struggle of the African Americans, we are not going to be truly a real Muslims, because a real Muslim is the one who loves for himself what he loved for his brother.
Alhamdulillah. And, I want everyone to know I had nothing to do with setting that statement up.
No, you didn't.
This comes from my sister, Dr. Sadia Ali Aden, without any prompting from me.
A Somali, just radical. You could call me whatever you want.
Now let me invite both of you. We're at the end of the program. It has gone much too soon. We're at the end of the program. I want to give both of you 1 minute to make any final statement, share any final thought that you would like to share with the audience before we bring this to a close. And I also want to alert my brother Sadiq, the engineer for the program, that I'm just going to take no more than 5 minutes after our sisters complete their 1 minute thoughts to share some closing thoughts on a very dear sister of ours that recently passed. She's both a daughter of South Africa and a daughter of Canada. So with that, Dr. Nisa Muhammad, let's begin with you. Your final 1 minute thought.
So my final 1 minute thought is for your listening audience, and for everyone that is going to maybe receive the broadcast, is that for us as Muslims, be a Muslim. Look at the life of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and see how he engaged with the world, because what we are doing is so far from his example. He fought for justice. He fought against oppression. He fought for the little people, so to speak. He fought to uplift women. He fought to uplift children, teenagers, older people, seniors, all of the people who were oppressed, the people who were locked out of what the world and society had to offer. That was his way. But we don't see that in the Muslims' lives today. Muslims can walk past an injustice and just keep on going. And so my encouragement and my thoughts to the listening audience that are Muslims, be a Muslim. Really be a Muslim and follow the way of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his fight for justice. Because if he were alive today, he would be in America fighting for Black Lives Matter as well. He'd be in the streets protesting as well. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Alaikum salam. All right,
MashaAllah.
Dr.
I
Sadia.
agree with my sister. She put it rightfully in the right way, and I don't so eloquently. The only thing that I would add is if we say we're a Muslim, it should not only be lip service. It should be true across the board. And when we say justice, Surah Al-Nisa, there is a whole ayah talking about, justice is talked about throughout the Quran, but specifically in Surah Al-Nisa, where it talked about be just, even, and I will not put it right, I know, but I'm just saying it verbatim. Be just, even if it's against yourself.
That's right.
Against your family, against the poor and the rich, you don't distinguish. Be just.
That's right.
The Muslim is all we ask of you today and every day is to be just. If you're just, then nothing will go wrong. We just want you to be just. And as far as the issue that is really on everyone's mind in the United States is concerned, vote. This is a matter of survival. Choose the lesser of the two evils. And today we know who is the lesser of the two evils. And for the Democrats, whatever happens, we don't think you're the best. We don't think you're better. We just, this particular moment, you feel right. But we know also under the Democratic leadership, the crimes that have been committed under minorities, under Muslims, under people who are in vulnerable positions. So we know, and we just want to say that, of course, we continue, but, as Brother Mauri Saalakhan always says, the struggle continues. So let's continue the struggle for justice.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you, my dear sisters, for your thought-provoking conversation today on this Salam Media platform. I know that it was something that is valued by everyone who tuned in, and there are going to be even more that will see it later. So I want to thank you again. May Allah Ta'ala bless you both. And with that, let me go right to this remembrance I want to share about a sister, and I know that both of my sisters will really appreciate this. A sister by the name of Khadija Hafaji passed away just a couple of days ago. She was someone that I was not aware of until she passed, but all that I have learned about her has been so impactful, that I had to salute her on a number of occasions over the past 2 or 3 days since I learned of her passing and who she was. I want to share as a concluding statement the release that came from the National Council of Canadian Muslims on the passing of a board member of theirs, Khadija Hafaji. They wrote, "Dear friends, on behalf of the staff and board of directors of the National Council of Canadian Muslims, it is with deep sadness that I announce the recent passing of our dear board member, Khadija Hafaji, on September 17th, it was just 3 days ago, 2020, the 28th day of the month of Muharram, 1442. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Verily we belong to Allah, and verily to Allah we will return." Auntie Khadija, as she was known, as she was affectionately known by many of us, was truly a one-of-a-kind person and trailblazer for both the Canadian Muslim community and for Muslim women. A longtime resident of Ottawa, Auntie Khadija came to Canada from South Africa, where she had witnessed the horrors and injustices of apartheid. A school teacher and an educator for many years, Auntie Khadija had a deep commitment to justice, to developing a resilient Muslim community and to fostering a greater understanding and ties between Muslims and people of all faiths and backgrounds in Canada. Auntie Khadija represented Canadian Muslim women at the UN World Conference on Women in Beijing, China in 1995, and the World Conference on Religion and Peace in Amman, Jordan in 1999. She was a strong advocate for the empowerment of Muslim women and mentored many in Canada. Her work touched the lives of community members across North America with her generosity, expertise, and wise counsel. Her devotion to community service ran deep. Auntie Khadija selflessly served in various leadership capacities over the years, including at the Ottawa Muslim Association, the Islamic Society of North America, where she was the first Muslim woman elected to ISNA's Majlis Shura, the Ottawa Muslim Women's Organization, and many other interfaith community organizations. At NCCM, Auntie Khadija provided a wealth of experience and knowledge on the board, and she was known for her wisdom, steadfastness, and love for all of us. She was an example of sincerity, service, and moral fortitude based on the prophetic tradition. The family of Auntie Khadija has requested that any donations made in her name go to local masajid or to the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, as Auntie Khadija loved children. Auntie Khadija will be greatly missed by the entire team at NCCM, including former board members and former staff. We give our deepest condolences to her beloved husband, Uncle Mazar, and her family. In the closing days of this sacred month, we pray that Allah gives patience and comfort to her loved ones, and that Allah bestows His mercy, forgiveness, and blessings on Auntie Khadija, accepts her countless good deeds, and grants her paradise. Ameen. And this is sincerely Kashif Ahmed, NCCM board chair, on behalf of that organization. And I'm reminded, brothers and sisters, in my conclusion, of what the Prophet ﷺ said about the sons and daughters of Adam. He said, when the son of Adam dies, nothing will be of greater benefit to him than three things: a continuous charity, some useful knowledge he has left behind, and a child who will pray for him. May Allah Ta'ala bless the heart of our sister, the soul of our sister. May Allah give her the most beautiful rest, expand her grave, fill it with light, and just continue to bless her legacy, to touch those who met her. And I want to thank my sister Shalina Marani for being the first one to bring her passing to my attention with the touching tribute that she wrote. And may Allah Ta'ala just continue to magnify the deep well of tradition and legacy that she left behind. Ameen. With that, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal Asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amalu salihati wa tawassaw bil haqq wa tawassaw bis sabr. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, by the token of time through the ages, verily humanity is in loss, except those who believe and do good, and exhort one another to truth, and exhort one another to patiently persevere. Thank you, dear guests, for being with us today. Thank you, those viewers that saw this live, and may Allah bless those also who will see it later. I'm sure you will enjoy it. Peace be unto you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.